Hey, friends. Welcome to Dishing on Divorce on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network radio, podcasts, and TV. I'm your host, Lisa Lisser, CEO and founder of LZL Coaching, a boutique coaching firm focused on divorce, relationships, and life transitions. So, when I was in first grade, we had an assignment. We had to write a timeline for our lives. Now, I was 6 years old and it was the early 70s, but I wrote what might have looked like a really forward thinking path, or at least for a 6-year-old. I'd go to college. I'd get married at 25. I mean, my mom was 20. I'd start having children at 30. My mom was 22. And I'd have 3 children by the time I was 35. Bingo. My mom had 3 children by the time she was 26. Now, clearly, I was on a journey that was much more independent and liberated than my mom, or so I thought. But my pathway that I wrote down, it was remarkably on track. I did go to college, then I went to law school, but I was married at 25. And I started having children at 30. And by the time I was 35, I had 3 kids. So, did I manifest it? Did I make it happen? Or was this just the track that I was supposed to be on? Well, we know how tracks go. And sometimes the boy you meet in college grows up with you, and sometimes you grow apart. And things happen and life changes you. And that was my story. So when the pretty picture that I painted at age 6 changed dramatically, I was kind of lost. I didn't know where to go next. But today's guest, Joy Reid, says life is a journey and not an event. And that message, Joy, it resonates with me. So welcome, Joy, to Dishing on Divorce.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
I loved listening to your intro. I loved that. But it's interesting because, I think we all have this idea, right? I had an idea of what my life was going to be like. But unlike my life, I'm a lesbian recovering addict alcoholic. This was not on the dream board.
Right.
At no point growing up did I say, oh, I hope I grow up to experience massive amounts of trauma and alienate everyone that I love. But for me, the word of my life has been pivot.
Yeah.
Because what I had planned, it never turned out.
Yeah.
It never turned out. And that's why, that line that I shared with you, life is a journey, not an event, was from a poem that I wrote. Life is a journey, not an event, and this is my journey so far. 1,000 missteps through forest and vale, all march to the beat of my heart. And I think that's in life, the best that we can do is follow what's right for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we may not know when we're following the path.
No.
That's right for us. But it is part of our journey, part of our learning.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go through any kind of trauma, but in this context, divorce,
yes,
you have to redefine your self-identity.
100%.
I'm thinking about what you just said, when you're a little girl, you're told you're supposed to be a certain way. You don't imagine that you're going to have a different interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't imagine that, but it happens. And then all the other things that happen maybe were a result of like that image didn't fit what you were told you were supposed to wear, the image you were supposed to wear. So then other things happen. And all of a sudden, you're trying to fit into a space that's not really part of your journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's an event. It's an event.
And that to the, fit into a space. I'm, as I said, I'm a recovering alcoholic. And years ago, I had a sponsor in AA, and she was working with a bunch of ladies, right? Every Wednesday we'd all get together. And one of them was going through a divorce. And she said, she goes, she said, my husband, or they separated, they weren't in a divorce yet. She said, my husband wants me to be a certain way, and I'm just not that way anymore. And my sponsor said, it's okay to not fit in the box that he bought you in.
Yeah.
And I went, wow, because we constantly, or like another thing I heard once, to thine own self be true. Yes, but your truths will change.
Yeah.
And we continue growing out of our boxes and growing into different people. And like you said, sometimes the person you're with and have married grows with you,
Yes.
and sometimes they don't. And then you have to eventually come to a crossroads where you make a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's big. And when we talk about, you know, I no longer fit the box that I came in. Like, I
Mhm.
love that because I work so much, especially when I'm doing the co-parenting work, in helping people learn to think outside of their box.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
outside the box thinking isn't just about business. It's
No.
really about how do we close ourselves off to different ideas or different experiences?
Mhm.
And how is our comfort zone actually this small little box of what we thought our beliefs were supposed to be, whether or not they're still our beliefs?
Mhm.
And and then how do we like open our eyes that the box that we're sitting in, whether it's div- a divorced woman or my husband cheated on me or my wife cheated on me,
Mhm.
whatever it is, like, I can't always stay in this victim box. I need to
Yeah.
get out. And I also need to have some outward mindset into what's my role and how can I change my perspective?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I you know, it's so interesting because the ending of a marriage, whether it's because of infidelity or there's been infidelity in the marriage, and so now there's struggles, or whether it's because they're or like with mine, we just were not a good fit, right? And I mean, I love my ex-wife
Yeah.
dearly. I take a bullet for her. Um, she's still my emergency contact, but
Yeah.
as partners, we tried and tried and I mean, no one has spent more money on couples counseling
Yeah.
than the two of us, but it wasn't a fit, right? And so at some point you have to call that, but then
Yeah.
you have to look at, and in couples counseling you look at your part, incessantly, kind
Yes.
of,
Yes.
if you come to it honestly
Right.
and bravely, you look at your part. But what I was not prepared for post divorce, because I mean, I was ready, right? I was ready for the marriage
Yeah.
to be done, and so was she. But it did not dawn on me, oh my God, my entire identity just got erased. Because for years I had been wife, mama, and keeper of the house.
Yeah.
Well, now my kids were grown and in college. I'm no longer a wife, and I was with somebody who kept her own darn house. So I
Mhm.
I I was just I thought, oh my God, I don't know who I am. I
Yeah.
don't I don't know. I mean, I know who I am, but I don't know who I am, which I think happens with a lot of
Mm.
us as women. We when we are married and raising children, I'd said to my ex-wife when we were talking about it, I wanted a child of my own very badly. Our boys were her boys, and I came in just in time to be a stepmom.
Okay.
But I mean, they weren't little when I got in, but it was just in time, right? They were like 9 and 12. So I like
Yeah.
a little bit later I would have missed the bouncy boy stage.
Right.
But I wanted a baby. I wanted a child of my own, and we talked about it and decided against it. She said, and she's 20 years older than I am, and she said, "Honey, I'm done." And I grieved it for a long time, and I remember talking with her one day, and I said, "I know it's the right decision, but it's hard. But I do know it's right because I have already learned I'm a good mama and I'm a good wife and I can be a good me, but I can't be all three simultaneously for a prolonged period of time.
Mm.
This one goes by the wayside really fast
Yeah. Yeah.
because I'm not gonna stop being a good mama, and I don't want to stop being a good wife." When I say good wife, I don't mean, the docile little obedient, but
No, that's not what I'm
showing
saying.
up, yeah,
Yeah.
like, just being present, being aware, coming back to the table, hearing, listening, loving, trying, respecting, right? I can and devoting the attention that a relationship needs. So this one fell. And when we got divorced, I thought, oh, I don't even know if I know what I like to do on a Friday night
Yeah.
anymore because
Well, because your experience changed you. So
mhm,
let's go there a little bit. I mean, I wanted to give a whole big intro for you, but I'm going to continue this conversation and we'll come back to your introduction.
that works better. I like the
Okay.
conversation better.
Okay. So when you say you were always going to be a good mama bear and you were always going to be a good partner, right? You were going to be her partner and you were going to do what it took to be her partner. You forgot how to be a partner to yourself.
Yes.
That's what it is.
That's brilliant. That is a brilliant way to put that.
And
Yes.
thank you. And because we spend so much time serving
Mm-hmm.
and we forget that we need attention as well.
Yeah.
And even when people may look at you and think, oh, that person made that decision and they're so selfish. How could they leave their family? How could they break up the family? That was a selfish decision. So the question is it selfish or is it the healthiest decision you had to make? And not everyone is going to understand it. So you're going to have the shame and blame that comes on top of it, which also is going to impact your self-image.
Oh, 100%.
Because you know that the decision you made was a decision you had to make, but the rest of your social world doesn't understand that because they don't live inside of you. And they certainly don't live inside your marriage. So all of that is woven into who am I going to be if I'm not that?
Yes. Yes.
Right. And so the bottom line is you are always going to be a mama. And you know how to be a good partner. So how do you reflect that back on yourself? You know, I was interviewed in another podcast and it was about infidelity and how that's loyalty. The loyalty you showed was not returned. But you sometimes feel like you don't understand it. I had a client who knew that her husband was unfaithful and he wasn't sure if he wanted to get divorced or not. And she didn't want that. Okay, he was ambivalent. So I see you're like, what? But no.
No, I was thinking because I realized I misunderstood. I misunderstood something. So that's why I looked up and I thought, wait, and then I was reprocessing. So now I can say he was on the fence about staying or not staying. Yes.
Right. And he just was sitting there waiting and she wanted him to make a decision because in her mind, she was loyal. And in her mind, she believed in family and sickness and in health until death do us part. And she had built the network of their entire family structure and all of the, it had been 30 years. But so the question is, how do you take that loyalty that you've embedded in the relationship when it's not returned, but be loyal to yourself? Like it's a flip. Like, now, what does it mean to stand in your own integrity?
Yes.
And how can you be loyal to yourself? And so that was the conversation that we had when she was trying to work out what was most authentic for her. And so many of us, as we serve, we don't necessarily believe that we deserve to be taken care of. And if we don't take care of ourselves, no one else will.
No.
And that also shows, like, if we don't respect ourselves enough to honor what we need, then we're sending a message to other people that, I don't deserve that. So that's all sort of part of that story where we lose ourselves sometimes in a relationship. And then when that relationship is over, that's when we ask the question, who am I now?
Yeah.
What is my identity?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think especially in our world, we women are not raised to do self-care. We're not taught. We're raised to take care of everything and everyone else, right? Gay, straight, purple with pink polka dots, doesn't matter. Yeah. If we are women, we are brought up to be the nurturing caretakers. And self-care isn't a thing, right? That is selfish. For women to do, that's selfish. Yeah. If a man wants to if dad wants to go golfing on Saturday for 2 hours, dad goes golfing on Saturday for 2 hours.
It's 5 hours. Come on. It's 5 hours.
That's but if mom wants to go to the spa for an hour, well, what are you talking? You've got 3 kids at home. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the other part that I think is the problem there, because beyond just the self-care issue too, you talk about when marriages are ending and the judgment that we get from people. Yeah. But the other part of that is that we don't allow anyone's broken pieces to show in our society. We don't allow any broken pieces or sadness to show. I mean, how many times have you heard someone say something like, oh, poor Barbara, it's so sad. She lost her mom and her husband within 6 months of each other, but you'd never know it. You never see her cry. Like, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
If Barbara's not crying, it's because either Barbara's close to a nervous breakdown from keeping everything pushed down, or Barbara doesn't feel safe around you. That's
Yeah.
but we celebrate this not showing our cracks, not
Well,
showing our stuff.
as you say that, I'm thinking of women's gymnastics. Okay, so back in the 90s, Carrie Strug was
Mm.
an Olympic gymnast, and I believe she broke her ankle,
Yes.
but
Yes.
she still had to do the vault.
Mhm.
And her coach, Bella Caroli, you know, you can do this because
Mhm.
it's honorable to compete when you're injured.
Mhm.
And she
Mhm.
landed the vault on one foot,
Mhm.
got the gold, but then she collapsed.
Yeah.
And so, but that was like the mark of a true champion.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
do we need to live life on one foot? And
Yeah.
so that's
Yes. Exactly.
the shift.
Exactly. And yes, there are times, right? There are times we have to land that vault
Yeah,
on one
of
foot.
course. You have no
But
choice.
having that mindset perpetually leads to so much pain. And I think it's actually one of the reasons that some people don't end up leaving their marriages,
Yeah.
even when they should, even when there's infidelity, repeated, especially repeated infidelity or emotional abuse or just alienation of affection, which I can't say just, because that is the worst loneliness in the world, is
Yeah.
feeling lonely next to somebody. That is a whole other level of loneliness. But we stay in these things because we have this mentality that, well, it hurts and I'm injured, but I have to keep going no matter what. I have to keep going no matter
Yeah.
what. Yeah.
And though I have to also say, marriage is a financial institution,
Mm,
right? It's an economic engine. Not
100%.
everyone has the courage or freedom.
Yeah,
I
and
would
the
want to say
means.
freedom and the means to step away. And not
Mhm.
everyone wants to. There are plenty of people who have arrangements and
Yes.
they stay in a marriage with arrangements, and that
Mhm.
works for them. And that might be a successful marriage. But there are others who are struggling, and it's not just that we grow apart. It's that things that happen in life are
Mhm.
pushing us in different directions.
Yeah.
We had a child who, when he was 7, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And
Mhm.
so there was a lot of management involved. And I never put my head in the place that this disease could kill him because I knew that we would never get there. But
Mhm.
people needed to know that he had it so that he would be safe. Whereas my my husband didn't want anyone to know, at least in the beginning, especially when my son would start doing sports. And so when I discovered that the football coach didn't know that my son had diabetes, I was devastated.
Mm.
And I took care of it. I made sure that he had everything he needed. But my ex-husband was the assistant coach. He just never told him. So I was wondering, like for me, that was the beginning of challenges that were hard to overcome,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and it's not so there's more than growing apart. It's like, how do we deal with challenges in life?
Mhm.
You need to be able to do that as a team.
Yes,
And
100%.
when that doesn't happen, even if there isn't one of the typical, damages of infidelity, financial abuse, fraud, all of those things.
Mhm.
But there are so many pieces that take us off of the journey. It's not an event. And
Yeah.
so we're serpentine, as I think
Mhm.
that you said. Um, so now I'm going to go into your bio. Is
Okay.
that okay?
Yes,
Well,
that's good.
actually, now we're at 19 minutes. So we're going to
Oh,
take a short break. And when we come back, I'll tell my audience who Joy Reid
there
is.
we go. We'll do that.
Okay, excellent. And we'll be right back. And we're back with Joy Reid. Divorce, our life is a journey, not an event. Divorce and Other Detours with Joy Reid. So, Joy and I have been talking and chatting away and not even noticing the time fly by, because this is a big conversation about those things that come into our lives and take us outside of the box that we thought we were in and lead us in different directions. So I'm going to start by talking about Joy herself. She's had a varied career. She was in sales, she did consulting, and her passion has always been advocacy and reform, but that was like in her personal realm. And then the personal became public when she co-founded the National Association of Single and Divorced Families, NASDF. So the work of NASDF allows her to bring her dedication and commitment to change into focus as her profession, her work, in addition to her passion. And as we learned, her own divorce was amicable, but she's witnessed the devastating financial, mental, emotional effects of divorce on all families and knows how difficult it is for single parents, divorced or not, to consistently provide a healthy lifestyle for themselves and their children. So it's Joy's goal to make NASDF the vehicle that provides much needed assistance, assurance, and advocacy for struggling parents and children across the country. So, nice bio.
It makes me sound like I know what I'm doing. No, I'm just.
I mean, yes, and right?
Mhm.
Life is a journey.
Not an event. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's go there. What brought you to do this work? Because for someone who you've had a varied life experience, you shared a lot with us already about, coming out and addiction and drugs and recovery and all of that. So how did you get to the work in the divorce world?
So I always say that my life has been like a water slide. Like I just sort of like, I think when they sent me down from whatever ether space we're in, I was just like, no, wait. And they just pushed. And so I just had to follow the water wherever it went.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 3.5, 4 years ago. What year is it? Right. So about 3.5 years ago. Well, before that, well, after my ex-wife and I divorced, I got involved too quickly with somebody else. And when that relationship failed also, I hit a level of darkness that I had not hit after my divorce.
Mm.
And I think it was the grief of a lot of things catching up. Like, it wasn't just that failed relationship. It was my failed marriage, this failed relationship, failures in life, right? And it all just sort of impacted at the same time.
Yeah.
And the only thing not the only thing, what saved me is I ended up learning that same year that I was autistic. And I had gone around for 41 years thinking that I was crazy and broken in my brain in a way that no one else was. Because women often present with different symptoms than men on the spectrum.
Okay.
And we get misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder, generalized anxiety and depression, because many aspects, when we're not masking, which I do constantly, I don't even know how to take it off anymore. When we're not masking our moods, the intensity of our emotions, the intensity of our feelings, our hypersensitivity, and then our periods of burnout, they can look similar to bipolar disorder. So when I learned that there was actually a word for what I was, and there were thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people who were weird just like me. And I don't mean weird in a negative sense, but I mean, we're not, I always say that being neurodivergent is like being an alien. We learn how to look like you, but we don't understand a lot of things that you do. And we don't know how to make ourselves fit very well.
Okay.
So at that point, I reassessed every decision I had ever made in my life. And realized that I had not been a good gatekeeper for me at all. And I had not had self-respect. When you think that something's wrong with you, you make very bad life and love choices.
Yeah.
And I had consistently taken jobs that weren't good for me, taken promotions that I knew would push me too far outside my comfort zone. Pushing someone on the spectrum outside of their comfort zone is a very, very dangerous idea.
Yeah.
Because we melt out. And I was working through a lot of things in therapy, trying to heal a lot of things, and coming back to more of a center of who I was than I had ever been before.
Okay.
At that point, funny enough, my ex-wife actually moved out to Florida
Okay.
and to be near her brother, who is my business partner, actually. And
Okay. Okay.
before Sherry moved out here, we had a conversation. We lived in the Bay Area of California, and that's where I lived for 20 years. It's where my family has lived for 6 generations. My mother grew up there. My boys, Sherry and I, our sons went to the same high school my mother went to.
Okay.
So it was, that's home. And before Sherry moved, we went for a hike in the Oakland Hills, and she said, I was talking about how hard it was financially in the Bay Area and how I was tired and I could feel myself atrophying, and I was making all of these changes in my life, but I couldn't change anything professionally. And I just couldn't get out of the sense that I was stuck. And she said, honey, I know that you talk about geographics being a bad thing. Like, we just tend to move things and think that they'll get better. But in this case, I think you need to consider moving. It's too expensive here. It's too hard here. It's too harsh here. So I ended up following her to Florida. I followed my ex-wife to Florida, and I started working with my former brother-in-law for his real estate business.
Okay.
Which I was only going to do, for just till I could find myself, right? Find my footing here. And one day, he went to a real estate conference. He ended up talking about this child support and alimony insurance product that he and his dad had come up with 25 years ago. And this idea that they'd had for an association. And he came back from the conference. We're sitting in the office, and he talked to me, and he said, I'm going to give you the business plan. Look it over. So I went home that night and I looked at the business plan, and that's all I did the rest of the evening and night. And I highlighted things and I wrote in comments, and I came back into the office the next day and I said, this is huge, because this isn't just which we do have. Ron is developing the insurance product that will cover child support and alimony in the case of death, disability, and involuntary unemployment. He's smiling because I always mess that up. So I did it right. So we have developed that product. We're in the process of launching it, but we developed this association that would be based like AARP, right? But for single and divorced families. But AARP has 3 arms. So they have a marketing company that funnels their money and transactions for their nonprofit that provides all the services and benefits, but they also have a 501c4 arm so that they can lobby and they can be more political in what they're trying to get accomplished for retirees.
Okay.
Because 501c3, you're very, very limited in what you can do as far as politically and lobbying and everything. You're very, very limited. So they established a C4 arm. So that's what we decided we would do for NASDF. We'd have the marketing company that would funnel the transactions, NASDF that would provide products, services, and resources that when you're getting a divorce or you're raising kids single, whether you've been married or not, things like diapers, formula, going through a divorce, mental health sessions, behavioral health sessions for the family, access to mediators, access to discounts on everything, right? That we need, child education, child daycare. So our NASDF provides those, but then as we grow more and our membership grows, we can funnel a lot of money into their advocacy arm, where Ron wants to focus on foster care reform. He's a foster father. And for me, where I want NASDF to go is in the direction of what are called 2-gen programs. And that's something that was first coined back in the 80s. And it refers to, Ascend at the Aspen Institute is huge in the 2-gen world. Annie E. Casey Foundation. It's basically the concept that, it's a long thing to explain, but if the concept is you cannot make things better for a parent who's struggling unless you also provide better opportunities for their children, better daycare opportunities, childcare opportunities. But you cannot provide better opportunities for the child unless you're also improving things for the struggling parent. And it's not just as simple as, let's stick them in pharmacy tech training and they'll be fine when they get out. And it's not as simple as, they can just take a higher paying job and they'll be fine. Because what we're dealing with, especially within, struggling intergenerational poverty households, if you're collecting benefits from the state to support your family, and you take a job that pays $1.50 more an hour, $2 more an hour, you now lose your access to those state benefits, but you're not making enough to recoup for them.
Right.
So your family takes a hit financially if you take a better paying job in many areas. And as far as just getting training, that's great. But how do you ensure that these people will get a job afterwards? And how do you ensure that they have a peer community to support them and encourage them? So 2Gen programs focus on holistically making things better for the family and providing access to better opportunities to just eradicate the idea of intergenerational poverty.
That's
And that's
amazing.
where I want us to take. Yeah. Because that is something, when you talk about single, struggling single parents, struggling parents in general. I mean, daycare itself, I could go off on for 1,000 years as far as the cost of that goes. I have so many friends that had amazing careers and had to quit because they weren't going to be making enough to cover the daycare costs when they
Yeah.
got pregnant and had kids. And it's
Yeah.
just, and yet daycare workers and providers are often paid like the on the lowest tiers. It's just the whole system is just insane. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, it is crazy. And acknowledging that, recognizing that, trying to find a solution to that
Hmm.
is really powerful. So then tell me, so you co-founded NASDF. You
Yes.
have these three arms. How do people find it? And where would someone go if they were in need of support? And how would they know that this is an organization that could provide it?
So we're in the process now of ramping up our marketing. We actually started this probably about 3 years ago. But it has been a slow process to build.
Mhm.
Ron and I went, yes, let's do it. And then we found out, oh, this is hard. So, I mean, we knew it was going to be, but we ran into so many obstacles along the way, including funding.
Mhm.
So it's been a slow start. We are just now really beginning to market our services and who we are.
Okay.
Our website, nasdf.org, has all the information on our benefits, resources, and products. We have Instagram and Facebook and YouTube accounts, NASDF.org. But as far as reaching out and asking for more resources and services, because I'm in the process now of compiling state by state access to resources.
Okay.
One of the biggest issues when you're going through a divorce, you look up divorce assistance or divorce resources, and you're just going to get a page full of lawyers and mediators.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I
there's a
know.
lot more that goes into that,
Yeah.
right?
We both know
That's
that.
needed.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think I'm on Ohio now or something. I've gone state by state compiling good legal resources. Yes, low cost, pro bono, as well as childcare resources, daycare, and how do you apply for assistance within your state for childcare money.
Mhm.
All the things that we know we can do when going through a divorce or raising children on our own, but are way too overwhelming and time consuming to take on and go look for. But until I have those up on the site, the best way to ask for resources is actually to email me. So if you use either my email address or info@nasdf.org, that also comes directly to me, and I respond to everything.
Yeah.
So
So who's your ideal client?
I don't think I have an ideal client. I think if you are a parent and you have a need, that's our ideal
Okay.
client.
Okay. So it
It's
doesn't.
not even about single and divorce, right? Because
Right.
it's if you're, or I mean, really, there's so many things in our services that apply whether you have a parent, whether you're a parent or not. I mean, the
Right.
mental health resources, right? Career guidance that we're getting put up there soon. These things apply whether you have children or not.
Right.
Especially in our society where the growing disparity in wealth and in struggling versus well off,
Right.
that chasm just gets wider and wider.
Yeah.
So anybody can benefit from what we have and provide. I mean, you were talking about diabetes, your child having diabetes. One of our providers, the one we get our diaper discounts from
Right.
and our formula discounts, that's actually ADW Diabetes. So they do a bunch of home medical supplies and diabetic supplies at lower cost, which is a huge deal for parents too who have
Yeah.
children with those needs. Um, but it's not just for, if you need help, that's our ideal client.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. It makes me think, I'm in a networking group and we had a couple of cosmeticians, makeup artists, and they
Mhm.
said their ideal client was anyone with a face. So
Yeah. Yeah,
so I
that's
love
it.
that.
If
Yeah.
anyone with a face, that's our
Yeah.
ideal client. Yeah,
Yeah.
anyone with a
That's
face.
that's your ideal client. But
Mhm.
but you're looking to really fill a niche of people who are lower income
Yes.
and don't have their own access.
Yes,
Um,
that is the
that's
ultimate goal.
that's
Mhm.
the ultimate goal. But on the other hand, by being a clearinghouse of resources state by state, you actually are providing access to information
Yes.
for anybody.
hmm
It's
And
very
information that we've looked at first. Like the mediator company that I have on our site right now is GoGo Mediators. And
okay.
I chose them because, well, one, they're nationwide, and it has been very hard to find resources that actually are nationwide and don't
National.
just say they are, but they're only in like 5 states.
Right.
But GoGo is national, and it was founded by an attorney who looked at the cost of mediation and went, "This isn't okay. Like this is the preferable route, but it's people are priced out of it." And so
Yeah.
he got together with a friend of his and went, "Okay, so let's make a difference here, and let's really try to lower the cost of mediation so that people have this as an option, not just for divorce, but in anything."
Yeah.
And I loved him. I loved his story. I when I spoke to him on the phone, he was so genuine and real. So the companies that we recommend to our clients and members as resources are companies that I've looked at, right? I didn't just do a Google
Right.
search and take the
Right.
first 5 and throw them on a page. Like I've looked at these people. Or Merit Financial Advisors, they're Hollis Hardiman with Merit. We recommend her because she's certified in this, certified as a divorce financial advisor, but also she grew up the child of a single mom and
Yeah.
watched what her mother went through, and this became a passion of hers, right, to help women who are going through this. So it's these aren't just, it's not ranked because somebody paid, and
Right.
it's not recommended because we're getting a kickback, and it's not just Google throwing sponsored ads out. These are people that we've looked at.
Yeah. So what
So
you're saying is that your product that you're offering are all individuals who share your values, who
yes, we
who
try
are
for the most part. Yes, I
right.
mean there's sometimes when it's sort of like, okay, well, what you offer is good, and I don't know about you morally, but what you offer is good and we
Right.
need it. But for the most part, we are trying to stay in line with this value of everybody deserves assistance.
Right.
And we're not out for dollar signs. We're out for
Right.
community. Yeah.
Right. And that's what I mean when I say share values. It
hmm
doesn't, you don't have to be in the same group,
Yeah.
but if you value integrity, if you value service, if you value supporting people in need, which is
hmm
essentially what you said you're doing,
Yeah.
then you're on board. And you can't say that of every divorce professional.
No.
So that's why your vetting process is really quite remarkable. So, I give you kudos on that.
Thank you.
Um, and now we're reaching the end of our interview, sad to say. But what would you want our audience to leave with if you had to give them one last piece of knowledge?
You know, a friend of mine has a favorite quote, and that quote is, "If we wait for the time that everything, absolutely everything is perfect, we will never begin."
Yeah.
And I love that because whatever it is that we're trying to do or restart or change or heal, we have to do it now. Start the
Yeah.
process now. And remember always that it is a process. Change doesn't happen overnight, and healing doesn't happen overnight, and beginning a new journey doesn't become easy overnight. And to just do one's best to stay the course with what is right for oneself, but as I said, your truth will change over time.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate
Oh,
it.
my pleasure. My pleasure. And tell us once again, how can my audience reach you?
So our website is www.nasdf.org. You can email me at jread@nasdf.org or info@nasdf.org.
Okay, great. Wonderful. And for all my audience, as always, you can reach me at lisa@lzlcoaching.com or just go to my website, www.lzlcoaching.com, and you can schedule a complimentary discovery session so we can talk about what you need and how I can support you. So that's it for today's episode of Dishing on Divorce. Thank you so much, Joy Reid.
Thank
And
you.
we'll be back next week with another episode.